What got you here won't get you there. Chapter 4 Part C Habits 5 to 8. Habit number 5 Starting with no, but, or however. A few years ago the CEO of a manufacturing company hired me to coach his coup. The coup was talented, but stubborn and opinionated. The first time I met with the coup to go through his direct reports feedback, his reaction was, "But Marshall, I don't do that. That one is free," I said. "Next time I hear no, but, or however it's going to cost you $20. "But," he replied, "that's not. That's $20. "No, I don't." He refuted. "That's $40. "No, no, no," he protested. "That's $60, $80, $100, I said. Within an hour, he was down $420. It took another 2 hours before he finally understood and said, "Thank you." A year later I knew the coup was getting better when a woman at the company gave a presentation to top management about how few women were in the company's upper ranks, always an explosive issue that makes men jumpy and defensive. After listening to her fundamental argument, the CEO said, "You're making some very interesting points, but..." The coup stood up and cut his boss off. "Excuse me. I think the correct response is, thank you." The CEO glared at him, then smiled and said, "You're right. Thank you." He turned back to the woman and asked her to continue. When you start a sentence with no, but, however, or any variation thereof, no matter how friendly your tone, or how many cute mollifying phrases you throw in, to acknowledge the other person's feelings, the message to the other person is you are wrong. It's not, "I have a different opinion." It's not, "Perhaps you are misinformed." It's not, "I disagree with you." It's bluntly and unequivocally, "What you're saying is wrong, and what I'm saying is right." Nothing productive can happen after that. The general response from the other person, unless he or she is a saint willing to turn the other cheek, is to dispute your position and fight back. From there, the conversation dissolves into a pointless war. You are no longer communicating. You're both trying to win. There are too many cheap, surefire, simple, guaranteed 100% accurate peeks into the competitive makeup of our colleagues and friends. But the following drill fits the bill. For 1 week monitor your coworkers' use of no, but, and however, keep a scorecard of how many times each individual uses these 3 words to start a sentence. At the very least, you'll be shocked at how commonly used these words are. If you drill a little deeper, patterns will emerge. You'll see how people inflict these words on others to gain or consolidate power. You'll also see how intensely people resent it, consciously or not, and how it stifles rather than opens up discussion. I monitor my clients' use of no, but, and however instinctively now, the same way an orchestra conductor hears musicians playing sharp or flat. Without even thinking, I keep count of their usage. It's such an important indicator that I do it on autopilot. If the numbers pile up in an initial meeting with a client, I'll often interrupt him or her to say, "We've been talking for 40 minutes. Do you realize in that time you have started 17 responses with either no, but, or however?" The client is never aware of it. That's the moment a serious talk about changing behavior begins. If this is your interpersonal challenge, you can do this for yourself just as easily as I do it for my clients. Stop trying to defend your position, and start monitoring how many times you begin remarks with no, but, or however. Pay extra close attention to those moments when you use these words in sentences whose ostensible purpose is agreement with what the other party is saying. For example, "That's true, however." Meaning, you don't think it's true at all. Or the particularly common opener, "Yes, but." Meaning, prepare to be contradicted. As in almost any one of these exercises to stop annoying behavior, in addition to self-monitoring, it's easy to monetize the solution. Do what I did with the manufacturing coup. Ask a friend or colleague to charge you money every time you say no, but, or however. Once you appreciate how guilty you have been, maybe then you'll begin to change your winning ways. Irony intended. That said, it's still a challenge. A few years ago I taught a class at a telecom headquarters. One of the men in my class mocked me when I mentioned this problem we have with no, but, and however. He thought it was easy not to use the words. He was so sure of himself that he offered $100 for each time he used them. I made a point of sitting with him during the lunch break. I asked him where he was from, and he replied Singapore. "Singapore?" I said. "That's a great city." "Yeah," he replied, "it's great but..." He caught himself and reached into his pocket for cash, saying, "I just lost $100, didn't I?" That's how pervasive the urge to be right can be. No, but, and however creep into our conversations even when the discussion is trivial, even when we should be hyper-aware of our word choices, even when it costs us $100. Habit number 6 Telling the world how smart we are. This is another variation on our need to win. We need to win people's admiration. We need to let them know that we are at least their intellectual equal if not their superior. We need to be the smartest person in the room. It usually backfires. Many of us do this covertly and unwittingly all day long. We do it whenever we agree with someone offering us some practical advice, whenever we nod our heads impatiently while people are talking, whenever our body language suggests that we are not hearing something we haven't heard before. Are those your drumming fingers I hear? We do this more overtly when we tell someone, "I already knew that." Alternative phrasings run the gamut from the gently chiding, "I think someone told me that," to the sarcastic, "I didn't need to hear that," to the downright arrogant, "I'm 5 steps ahead of you." The problem here is not that we are merely boasting about how much we know. We are insulting the other person. What we are really saying is, "You really didn't need to waste my time with that information. You think it's an insight that I haven't heard before. But I agree with you and totally understand what you are saying. You mistake me, the ever so wise and lovely me, for someone who needs to hear what you are saying right now. I am not that person. You are confused. You have no idea how smart I am. Imagine if someone actually said all that to your face. You'd think they were a jackass. But that's what people hear and think when you say, "I already knew that." You're better off hearing them out and saying nothing at all. The paradox is that this need to demonstrate how smart we are rarely hits its intended target. A friend was interviewing for a research assistant's job with a psychology professor. The professor was writing a book on genius and creativity. During the course of the interview, the subject turned to great geniuses specifically. The professor boasted that he had read everything he could find about Mozart. This is typical of academics. They are exceedingly proud of their intellects, and never pass up a chance to tell the world how smart they are. But this professor went a step further. To prove his depth of knowledge he challenged my friend to ask him any question about Mozart. My friend demurred, a little surprised at the strange turn the job interview had taken. But at the same time, his brain was working overtime. Classical music and opera, as luck would have it, were his great passion. He, in fact, knew more than most people about Mozart. "Go ahead," said the professor, "don't be shy. I can handle it." My friend begged off again, although by now he was running potential questions through his mind. Where was Mozart born? When did he die? What was his sister's name? All too easy. Indulge me, the professor insisted. Unless, of course, you don't know enough to ask a question. That rhetorical slap in the face clenched it for my friend. Okay, he said, name 13 Mozart operas. To a self-proclaimed Mozart fanatic, identifying 13 operas Mozart composed, at least 20 of them should have been a snap like asking a presidential historian to name all the vice presidents. Alas, the professor could only name 9. An awkward moment in the interview, thought my friend, feeling both sheepish and triumphant. There was a smart person in the room, but he wasn't the one boasting about it. To the professor's credit, he didn't hold it against my friend. He offered him the job on the spot. To my friend's credit, he declined. Being smart turns people on. Announcing how smart you are turns them off. So, how do you tone down the need to tell the world how smart you are? The first step is recognizing our behavior. Have you ever done this? Your assistant dashes into your office with a document that needs your immediate attention. What your assistant doesn't know is that you've already been alerted to the situation a few minutes earlier by another colleague. What do? Do you accept the document and thank your assistant, omitting the fact that you already are up to speed on the matter? Or do you find some way to make your assistant aware that you are privy to the information? In my experience, this seemingly insignificant moment is a litmus test for our excessive need to tell people how smart we are. If you can let the moment pass with a simple thank you, you're doing fine. If you're like most people, though, you won't let it go so easily. You'll find a way to communicate that you're a step ahead of your assistant. The manner in which you do this may vary from a simple, I already knew that, to a dismissive, why are you bothering me with this? But either way, the damage is done. The implication is that your assistant has just wasted your time, that your assistant has confused you with someone who is not up to speed on all things vital and urgent, that your assistant has no clue how smart you really are. Stopping this behavior is not hard, a 3-step drill, in which you have paused before opening your mouth to ask yourself, is anything I say worth it? B. Conclude that it isn't, and C. Say, thank you. If you can stop yourself in this minor moment with someone who works closely with you, and presumably knows you well, in other words, when nothing is at stake and you don't have to flex your muscles, you have the skill to stop telling the world how smart you are. After all, if you can resist the urge in a really comfortable moment, when you are in a dominant position, you will certainly hesitate in other situations, when you are not so dominant and comfortable. Think about it. If your CEO walked into your office brandishing the same document, would you tell him or her in the same contemptuous tone that you already knew that? Habit number 7. Speaking when angry. Anger has its value as a management tool, I guess. It wakes up sleepy employees. It raises everyone's metabolism. It delivers the clear message that you give a damn, which employees need to hear on occasion. But at what price? Emotional volatility is not the most reliable leadership tool. When you get angry, you are usually out of control. It's hard to lead people when you've lost control. You may think you have a handle on your temper, that you can use your spontaneous rages to manipulate and motivate people. But it's very hard to predict how people will react to anger. They will shut down as often as they will perk up. Whenever I hear managers justify anger as a management tool, I wonder about all those other leaders who do not need anger to make their subordinates toe the line. Without anger to strike fear in the troops, how do these steady, composed leaders ever get anything accomplished? But the worst thing about anger is how it stifles our ability to change. Once you get a reputation for emotional volatility, you are branded for life. Pretty soon that is all people know about you. For example, basketball coach Bob Knight won 3 NCAA titles at Indiana University, and is only one of 2 coaches in college history with 800 or more victories. By any measure, he's one of the greatest coaches of all time. But he also has a well-documented history of arguing with referees and tossing chairs across the court. That reputation overwhelms Knight's record. When people think of Bob Knight, their first thought is his volcanic temper, not his one lost record. It's the same in the workplace. We save a special place in our minds for our chronically angry colleagues. No matter what else they do, we brand them as easily combustible. When we talk about them, the first words out of people's mouths are, I hear he has a temper. That hothead image is tough to live down. Given the fact that our efforts to change are judged not by us but by the people around us, you may need years of calm, collected behavior to shake such a reputation. How do you stop getting angry? I don't have a definitive answer. Anger management is not the subject of this book, and even if it were, I doubt if I could shut down your rages at life's injustices and follies. But I can make you appreciate that you're probably not angry at the proverbial other guy, and B, there's a simple way to lose your reputation for getting angry. On the first point, when I have to deal with anger in my line of work, it's invariably one-on-one rage, the anger that one human being induces in another. It's my job to show clients that anger is rarely someone else's fault. It's a flaw that's solely our own. A Buddhist legend tells of a young farmer who was covered with sweat as he paddled his boat up the river. He was going upstream to deliver his produce to the village. He was in a hurry. It was a hot day and he wanted to make his delivery and get home before dark. As he looked ahead, he spied another vessel heading rapidly downstream toward his boat. This vessel seemed to be making every effort to hit him. He rowed furiously to get out of the way, but it didn't seem to help. He yelled at the other vessel, "Change direction, you idiot! You are going to hit me. The river is wide. Be careful." His screaming was to no avail. The other vessel hit his boat with a sickening thud. He was enraged as he stood up and cried out to the other vessel, "You moron! How could you manage to hit my boat in the middle of this wide river? What is wrong with you?" As he looked at the other vessel, he realized that there was no one in the other boat. He was screaming at an empty vessel that had broken free of its moorings and was going downstream with the current. The lesson is simple. There is never anyone in the other boat. When we are angry, we are screaming at an empty vessel. All of us have people in our lives who drive us crazy, whom we hate with a passion. We may have spent countless hours reliving the moments when this person was unfair, unappreciative, or inconsiderate to us. Even remembering this person bumps up our blood pressure. It's obvious that the best course of action for dealing with people like this is to not let them make us angry. Getting angry doesn't improve the situation, and life's too short to waste on feeling bad. A sage would say that the person making us so angry cannot help who he is. Getting mad at him for being who he is makes as much sense as getting mad at our desk for being a desk. If we had his parents, his genes, and his background, we would be him. That's easier said than done, but it comes closer to the real issue. More often than not, we might as well be him, because we are really angry at ourselves. As to the second point, I can help you lose your reputation as a person who gets angry with one simple piece of advice. It is this: if you keep your mouth shut, no one can ever know how you really feel. That's asking a lot, I know. You have to suppress your natural inclination and bite your tongue. But once you appreciate the payoff of saying nothing, that if you're silent, you cannot make an ass out of yourself, or make an enemy out of someone else, then you might have a chance of getting better. I learned this after spending a week at a retreat at a small monastery in Plum Village, France, a few years ago. Our guide was a Vietnamese Buddhist monk, Thich Nhat Hanh. Each day Thich Nhat Hanh encouraged us to meditate on a variety of topics. One day the topic was anger. He asked us to think of a time in our lives when we had become angry and lost control. Then he asked us to analyze who was responsible for our unattractive behavior. I thought of my daughter Kelly, when she was in her teens. She came home wearing a large brightly colored article of jewelry called a navel ring. These are common among the younger set, along with tattoos in hard-to-reach places of the human anatomy. There is no use having a navel ring if people can't see it. So Kelly had also acquired a heroically skimpy outfit designed to highlight the navel ring and nearly everything else about her abdomen. A navel ring on a daughter is one of those moments that really tests a father's tolerance and love. But for me it was a little more complicated, I guess. I reacted with something less than enthusiasm. In fact, I devolved into a raving, ranting caricature of an angry father. As I meditated on this event in the quiet confines of a monastery, I wondered, what was I thinking about? I realized that my first thought was that someone would see my daughter and think, what a cheap-looking, trashy kid. Who are her parents? My second thought was worse. What if one of my friends saw her and thought, I can't believe Marshall allows his kid to parade around town like that? Who was I concerned about in this case? Kelly or me? Was the bigger problem her navel ring or my ego? If I had to do it over again, I would still suggest she lose the navel ring. 1 week of enlightenment in France is good, but not that good. However, I would stop reacting with anger and making a fool out of myself. I may be raging like a lunatic inside. But if I stop speaking when angry, no one has to know about it. The next time you start to speak out of anger, look in the mirror. In every case, you'll find that the root of your rage is not out there but in here. Habit number 8: negativity, or let me explain why that won't work. We all know negative people, or what my wife calls negatrons, in the workplace. They're the people who are constitutionally incapable of saying something positive or complimentary to any of your suggestions. Negativity is their default response. You could walk into their office with a cure for cancer and the first words out of their mouth would be, let me explain why that won't work. That, in my experience, is the telltale phrase of negativity. I cite it as a major annoyance because it's emblematic of our need to share our negative thoughts even when they haven't been solicited. Let me explain why that won't work is not quite the same as adding too much value, because no value is being added. It's not like overusing no, but, and however, because we are not hiding our negativity under the mask of agreement. Nor is it the same as passing judgment on someone else's ideas, because we are not rating or comparing anything. We are not saying it's good, better, or best. It's clearly not the same as making destructive comments, because it's not overtly nasty. Let me explain why that won't work is unique, because it is pure unadulterated negativity under the guise of being helpful. We employ it or its variations, such as the only problem with it is to establish that our expertise or authority is superior to someone else's. It doesn't mean that what we say is correct or useful. It's simply a way of inserting ourselves into a situation as chief arbiter or senior critic. The only problem with it, to coin a phrase, is how little we like or respect our critics. They're annoying. And over time, we treat them as if they're carrying avian flu. We avoid them. We stop working with them. We refuse to help them. I used to know a woman named Terry, who ran a lecture bureau in New York City. 2 or 3 times a year she would book me to speak to a corporate group. I'd talk about leadership and helping people change. At the end of each speech, invariably 1 or 2 people in the audience would come up to me, hand me their cards, and invite me to speak to their group in the near future. Apparently, I was delivering a message that they thought other people would want to hear. I could have handled the details of the speaking appearance myself, I suppose, but because the invitation occurred on a date that Terry had set up for me, I felt obliged to turn it over to her. I thought it was only right that she negotiate for me and earn her commission. I'd call her up immediately after the appearance. She'd ask how the event turned out. Was the host pleased? That sort of thing. I'd say, great. In fact, a couple of people want me to speak to their groups. Then I'd read the contact information off their business cards so she could follow up with them. Without fail, Terry's first response was always some variation on let me explain why that won't work. The company had a history of paying low fees, so they couldn't afford me. Message, I was too expensive. The company's employees were yokels, who didn't need to hear my message, or were too ignorant to get it. Message, I was too sophisticated. The company would abuse my time, they'd want me to stay all day, including dinner, costing me an extra travel day. Message, I'd be overworked. When Terry responded this way, I'd hold the receiver out and stare at it, dumbfounded. Here I was throwing easy money at her, and she was coming up with bogus reasons to shoot me down. Perhaps she thought she was protecting me from a potentially bad deal. But in trying to prove to me that she knew more about her business than I did, she only proved that she didn't understand me at all. I don't overcharge clients. My message is simple, not complicated. And I'm not afraid of work. If clients want me to stick around all day, I take it as a compliment, not an abuse of my time. It made me wonder if I really wanted Terry presenting me to the world. Eventually I realized that I could have been forwarding Terry an invitation from me to host the Academy Awards, and she would have found a way to put a negative spin on the opportunity. I stopped working with her. If negativity is your flaw, my first impulse would be to have you monitor your statements the moment someone offers you a helpful suggestion. If you've read this far, you know that I firmly believe that paying attention to what we say is a great indicator of what we are doing to turn people off. If you catch yourself frequently saying, let me tell you why that won't work, you know what needs fixing. But in this case, the more revealing clue would be to take a personal inventory of how your colleagues deal with you. How often do they come to you with helpful suggestions without you having to ask? How often do they knock on your door and sit down to shoot the breeze, or give you a heads up about a development that may affect you? How does the flow of traffic around your desk compare with other colleagues? Are you a popular item, or are you beginning to gather dust on the shelf? If you get even the vaguest sense that there is an imaginary do not enter sign outside your office, you've just become a little smarter about what you must change. When the issue is negativity, I prefer this form of observational feedback to mere monitoring of speech patterns. Checking what you say doesn't automatically tell you what other people think of you. You may be overly negative, but your colleagues may be capable of living with it. But seeing how people relate to you provides proof that your flaw is serious, that it matters to people, that it's a problem.